To begin with, we would just give a brief idea about what IWOF is. So IWOF is basically a community which has people, which has women from different international diverse backgrounds who come together to make the Finnish living in the Finnish society much more inclusive and much more enriching. So this organization was registered as a not-for-profit organization in November 2019. And the IWOF Talks Learning, basically it's a series of talks that takes place where we have people from different backgrounds, whether it be academia, corporate, teaching and learning, or anything that is possible, to one platform where they can come, where guests can come, they can talk, they can give us information, advise us, guide us in how to make our careers better and go into a different path, or any sort of advice that we want to. So for today's session, the agenda is we start off with the introduction. That is, we have our guest who will be introducing himself. That will be followed by a discussion. And along with, after that, we'll have a question and answer session. So if during the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat section. We'll keep a track of it. And then either during the session or towards the end, we will raise these questions and then our guests can answer those. So today's topic or today's theme is do's and don'ts when switching from academia to another sector. And we gladly invite Sami Itani to be our guest today. And without wasting much time, I would request Sami Itani to please take on the stage and carry on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ashmita and Elena and everybody. Let me just share with you my screen. How does it happen? Yes, so I assume you guys can see it now, right?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. And then I'll just go here. I'm not good with tech, but I managed. Excellent. So I'm Sami, and I figured that for the next, let's say, 15-20 minutes, I could first go through a few slides. But please, guys, don't mind interrupting me, grilling me, challenging me already during these few slides. I don't mind at all. I'm here to serve you guys if I just find a way to do that. And in case you have any questions or themes you would like me rather to address, let's walk that path. And there's not, this is kind of intimate meeting, so there's not so many of us, so let's make it informal and convenient for us all. Cool. What I heard was that most of you are in academia as students or scholars and might be willing to make a shift eventually to private businesses or elsewhere in work life. And hopefully I can give you some advices and tips. And if not, please let me know so that the next time I'll be invited somewhere, I'll do something differently. A few words about myself. I think I have fairly diverse background, both in terms of my genes, cultural heritage, but also my competencies. I'm not excellent in anything, but I've done a lot of things. I'm a double citizen, so in that sense, I guess that there are similarities between our backgrounds. However, I was born in Finland, so I obviously know that it's a little bit different ball game if you're fluent in Finnish. But in any case, I'm a Finnish Lebanese citizen. My dad's from Beirut, and we all live here in Helsinki. And I do definitely believe that both my fairly young age, 34, and multicultural background have been tremendous assets for me thus far in my professional life. Formal education has helped me too. In the presentation, I will tell you a little bit more why and how, and I'm sure you can find some similarities there with your own story as well. So I got my PhD from Aalto Business School. However, I've never considered myself as a business scholar rather than sociologist. But yes, in 2016 I graduated, but already before that I joined I joined private business. So during my studies, and simultaneously when I was studying, I did professional sports, athletics, track and field. So in a way, I've had a career in the academia, I've had career in sports, I've had career in private businesses, and I have an ongoing career in NGOs. So I guess this is the 21st century that you can do different kind of things in couple of years periods. So it's kind of like a project after another, and I tend to make one project 4 to 5 years and then see if there is something else I could do or where I'm better at. But yeah, also as an athlete, obviously, I learned a lot of skills that have been subsequently useful for me in work life. And I'm absolutely convinced that everybody has assets that can be utilized at work. But what is difficult is that you should be able to present them to the recruiting manager. And sometimes when it's so obvious to you that the skills that you have, you might be unclear when presenting them. And for example, as an athlete, if you're looking for a job and you just say that, okay, I did professional sports, of course it gives me benefit. But if the hiring manager doesn't appreciate or know professional sports, definitely it's no benefit for you. And the same applies no matter if you have background in playing the piano or doing volunteer work or being a parent or whatever. You have to be very explicit in presenting it to the recruiting manager already in your motivation letter if possible. And yeah, in business, the last 5 years, I worked at the Adecco Group, which is the world's largest staffing firm, and also here in Finland, they do important job and employ thousands of Finns every day, all over the country. And I had 6 different roles within those 5 years, which I don't know if it tells more about the organization or myself, the restlessness. But nowadays, I suppose that even the Fortune 500 corporations are getting braver and really have the courage to invest in individuals' potential and not only the past experiences. So I was definitely lucky enough to work at the Adecco Group. However, I did resign a few months ago, and now I'm focusing on my positions of trust and kids. I'm staying at home with my 2 kids. So I'm working in NGOs and also in business in board positions. And I guess as the president of Athletics Federation, I'm known to someone here in Finland. It's an NGO with close to 100,000 members, and excellent place to meet new people and do something that is personally valuable for me. And I've written 2 books. So all in all, I'm not a brilliant writer, I'm not a brilliant boss, I'm not a brilliant leader, I'm not a brilliant athlete, whatever. But I'm really good at utilizing those strengths that I have and gathering a team around me who can supplement my shortcomings. So that's about me. And yeah, so you are either interested or currently seeking job outside of the academia or about to graduate. So I figured that in the beginning, in this intro, I might share with you a few megatrends of work, which apply here in Finland, obviously, as well, although they are fairly global. And I'm sure that you are familiar with many of them, but hopefully I can share some new insights with you anyway. And like said before, if you have questions or you want to comment or challenge me, please do that. Feel free to interrupt. I don't mind at all. So there's a lot of text. Don't worry about it. I will go through them one by one. So I can see there's like 6 global megatrends of work. And why do they matter? In many ways. First of all, I definitely believe that background in academia and higher education gives you a lot of tools that you can actually better use in the future work than in the past. They say that the importance of formal education and degrees is facing an inflation, especially in countries like Finland. But after being some years in business, I definitely have to agree with that. I think it's becoming even more important than before. but simultaneously it's becoming more challenging to be actually saying what you have learned, because the degree as such is not the thing, but the learnings during your years at the university. But about the global megatrends, we can start from the geopolitical and economical insecurity. Obviously, we all know that there is a lot of micro and macro level economic volatility, no matter if we speak about global finance crisis or pandemics or protectionism, or you name what. And at the same time, we also here in our own private households, it's difficult to find the future clear, and it's becoming vague. And that obviously requires a lot of understanding for complex causalities. So below you can find some bullet points that are important, like skills to possess when it comes to each megatrend, and presenting or understanding complex causalities, and later on coherently presenting them to different kind of audiences. That is precisely what you do in academia, or at least you should be doing it, no matter if it's in master's pace or as a PhD student or even in bachelor's. But definitely complex causalities, understanding them and presenting them to differing audiences is important, and increasingly important in the future of work. And yeah, we can see that the weakening nation states, although nationalism is lifting its head all over the world, especially here in Europe and Northern America, the big multinationals are playing increasingly political role. And obviously there are a lot of opportunities in it, but it's also a major threat to some kind. The private companies are brilliant with merging and cooperating over borders and intercontinentally in comparison with nation states nowadays. Why is it a risk? Well, I think it's a risk because the private businesses tend to be polarizing now. So if you're working in an SME, the future might not be as bright as in multinationals. But in any case, it is a global world, and intercultural understanding is something every single employer now needs. And not everybody possesses that. And they say that Finland is some sort of homogeneous country. I don't really buy that narrative, but let's say it is. Definitely intercultural understanding is not something that everybody can understand, like knows what it means in practice and has lived through that. So in that sense, universities, they are more or less melting pots in Finland when it comes to different kind of cultures, gender, social background, age, ethnicity, etc. In universities, we mix and we learn from each other. Work-life values, they say they are changing fast. I don't know, typically in public discussion, the differences between generations are being exaggerated. But in any case, it is true that the next generation, let's say the Zeta generation, or to some extent us, the millennials, we highlight the meaningfulness of work. The company values really need to matter. They cannot be mere rhetorics and PowerPoints, but it needs to be thoroughly integrated in the strategy, that what we do, why we do it, why is it important to the society around us. Relating on the value question, it's also important to understand that the work-life balance is increasingly important. They say that the youngsters entering the work life now are me generation. I want this, I want that, I want this. Maybe I'm not saying it's the case, but in any case, the balance between work and the rest of the life is increasingly important, and of course it's increasingly difficult as well. Especially if you're doing knowledge-intensive work, which is not bound to any place, physical place or time. And yeah, businesses have increasing need for flexible workforce solutions. I guess you have seen that nearby you already now. It's quite self-evident. One would say it's an opportunity, others would say it's a threat, but in any case, that's more or less a fact. So self-awareness, knowing who you are, Do you feel you're in control of your life? Where do you aim to be? This kind of, in a way, simple but extremely difficult questions you should be able to learn in university, or at least you ponder them every once in a while. And tolerating change and vagueness. Yes, as a scholar, for example, when you publish, the publishing pipeline, it's filled with endless vagueness. You never know whether you succeed or not, or how long it takes in the process publishing a paper, etc. So a lot of learnings in universities in there. So before I go further, I still have like 4 mega trends. Any questions or comments at this point? That doesn't need to be, but in case you have, feel free to interrupt.
No, at this point, not yet.
All right, excellent. So yeah, we all know the sexy buzzwords: digitalization, big data, AI. Well, we all know that productivity of work has actually grown exponentially. It's an empirical fact already since the early 1970s. However, polarization of societies, even in fairly equal societies and egalitarian societies as Finland, is taking place as well. No matter if we speak about financial polarization of opportunities, health, education. So this is alarming, and it's also partially of the digitalization. And they say that, every once in a while you probably hear that some big boss or politician says that in 10 years' time, 70% of the jobs we have today are non-existent because of technological innovations. I wouldn't be too worried about it. I don't think human being ever becomes idle. And there is always sort of political reasons to say that kind of statements, or give that kind of statements. And we can see that we have had them around since the mid-19th century, like 170 years already. Karl Marx and Engels said that 10 years' time there will be no job anymore in factories or in the agriculture because of technology. But now we can see that close to 200 years has passed, and the participation rate of people entering work life has risen from 40 healthy young men to 70, where we are now. So I'm not too worried about digitalization, etc., when it comes to the future of work. But obviously there are a lot of privacy concerns, and intensifying medialization is quite anxious for many. We are all private medias in this time and place of social media. So it does polarize the people around us too. And the fact that every personality is some sort of a brand, more or less, I think it's sorry to say this, but bullshit. But in any case, others are, and others use it skillfully, and that's something I wanted to pinpoint too. So multi-channel communication skills. I think in universities, at least in the schools where I've attended, we've trained them. And project management. For instance, doing your master's thesis, it is a project, and you are the manager. You might have people around you helping you out, in collecting the data, your supervisor, etc. But it's up to you whether it goes by the agreed schedule or not. And nowadays in work, in knowledge-intensive companies, no matter what your title is, if it's a project manager or a CEO or a salesperson, it is always team-based project work that you do. So team-based project work, that's what you've done as a student, at least if you have graduated, you should have been able to excel that. So these are all like things that you should be able to pinpoint to the employer, not like some technical explicit aspects that you have learned in your studies. Gig and platform economy. I think the most important skill I learned in my studies was ability for critical thinking, or let's say not ability, but courage. I think the expectations of all the stakeholders in private companies nowadays are changing so rapidly. No matter if we speak about the ownership, we speak about the employees, the clients, the external market, the competitors, everything. It is changing rapidly. So hence the ability to encourage, to challenge the conventional ways of thinking, no matter if we think about operational aspects or strategic questions, this is pure gold. And I think at least I have been lucky enough to have students, fellow students and teachers around me in universities who have pushed me to challenge the easy solutions and answers. So critical thinking and curious mind, you cannot graduate if you don't have them, and increasingly important in the future of work. Geographical changes, yes, this is something perhaps that the university degree doesn't, or education doesn't really help, doesn't do any harm either, but still. And finally, imbalance of skills. Constant retraining and reskilling is a really important differentiation tool for workers in most industries. It could be formal education you receive, it could be informal education or mentoring, or you name it. But still, formal degrees are more or less universal, especially if you have gained them from established institutions like all the universities or schools of applied sciences are in Finland. So they are always plausible and hence valuable as such. And also the mindset of having, like, Hegel's thesis, antithesis, synthesis. There's always an idea which will be challenged because no idea is complete. And subsequently, synthesis is being replaced and eventually becomes a thesis. I don't know if I explained it properly, but in any case, a mindset of constant challenging, and nothing is really fixed, because we are not speaking about natural sciences in business. It is social sciences. We are human beings, and we cannot objectively evaluate anything. So in that sense, this kind of mindset is really important in the future of work, when the imbalance of skill is definitely a megatrend that affects. Cool. So it's been 20 minutes now. I hope I can somehow answer any questions you might have. This was just the opening. If you have like concrete practical questions in your mind, you might be seeking for a job or something, please don't be afraid to ask. I'm really glad if I can help somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sami. And we have actually the first question.
Yes.
So Elena is asking how to overcome biases. The academic work is not a real work, and academia has nothing in common with real life. Slightly paraphrase points from rejection letters. What are the practical ways to address these matters in motivational cover letters?
Yeah, obviously it depends also what you study, but it is true that for example, in business, they say that the gap between practice and theory is huge. Like whatever you learn in the university, you cannot apply it here in our company X. Now, actually, that's not the point. That you should be able to apply some theories one by one in practice. No, not at all. But what is important is that like the soft skills when doing research, for example, the soft skills and the critical thinking you need to possess. And later the ability to, understand complex causalities and then present your findings in a concrete manner to different kind of audiences. Actually, pretty much things that I already said before are in the essence of academia. So it doesn't matter what is the theory as such, but it's the process of proceeding to some kind of a theoretical idea what matters. And if you're unable to present this, then there's a long way ahead of you. But if you're able really to hook the recruiting manager and say that no, you got it all wrong. University is not about teaching technical skills unless you're a doctor or an architect. It's about teaching a mindset, and theories are like embodiment of these mindsets. They are not meant to be perfectly practical. So, and definitely if you're, let's say, your hiring manager is a PhD and you're a PhD, the same as with the athletes before, they get it without you being necessarily, you don't have to present it. But if they are not, then they don't understand it. And yeah, for example, the older generations that tend to be the decision makers in organizations, they are not as highly educated as we and you guys are. So they might have arrogant approach to higher education. So it is definitely our job to be explicit and tell what have we learned. And obviously, let's say the theories you learn at schools, they get older anyway in a couple of years' time, but the soft skills you have learned in universities never get old. So I hope that somehow answered your question. A really good question, by the way. Was it from Elena? Yeah.
Yes, and I actually have a following question about the soft skills. So what would be the best way to put it on CV? Just write what you are best at, or is there any other specific way?
Yeah, I think like writing a bullet point where you state a soft skill and you say that I'm good at it, it's not really the best possible way to proceed. In your motivation letter, you definitely, or I think I prefer, I've seen thousands of CVs and I've recruited a lot of people. In the motivation letter, people don't really have the time to read them. There's too much of them anyway. So you need to have in that a few bullet points. You can start with the soft skill, let's say critical thinking, or, passionate heart, warm heart, or benevolent mind, or whatever it is. Just one word, highlight it, and then write a story, one paragraph, a story where you share a life experience from your past. It could be from studies, it could be from your family life, it could be from your previous organization, it could be from your hobbies, wherever. And in this paragraph, through a story, which is true, you demonstrate how you possess this soft skill. And then you have your 5 superpowers, your soft skills, told through very compact stories from differing kind of, backgrounds, social backgrounds, showing diversity as well. I think that always hits me hard. I'm not saying it's an absolute right way to proceed, but it always works with me, rather than just listing soft skills that you presumably are good at. And obviously, when you meet vis-a-vis and, in an interview, for instance, sharing these stories is, a narrative always hits better than a statement. It's something you should practice beforehand.
Okay, thank you. We have another question, interesting one. It says, "Hi, I was a self-employed teacher for 5 years in Helsinki. Currently want to make a career change and work in the social field. I got feedback that I don't have any experience in this field. I realized that I should do an unpaid internship. Is it a good path to enter a Finnish working life? And how long should be an unpaid internship?" Thanks in advance.
Thank you. That is excellent question. Yeah, unpaid internships are done quite often with students. I think, and now I'm being very bold, no matter what the organization is, there is a hint of exploitation in the idea of unpaid internship, unless the individual is very actively willing to work for you and says that, okay, even if you don't have a place for me, I'm really eager to learn new things and you don't have to pay, etc. Then I guess it's fine. But if you're an experienced professional, as you are, even from a different industry, I definitely don't think that unpaid internship is by any means a respectful first step for you when shifting an industry. However, if you enter one, you can make it as short as possible. Say that, okay, how about we make a temporary contract, 6 months in the beginning. There is this 2 months at first, or maximum 1 month. You get to see what kind of person I have, what kind of skills I have, and the pay is only gross 40%. Yeah, might work, but yeah, if you're approaching employers and saying as an experienced, not a student, but as an experienced professional, that I'm willing to work for free, I don't think even the employer feels like, okay, this is the person we should hire, because why would she work for free?
Helena has a point. She says, actually, there are regulations about unpaid internships. As I recall, unpaid internships should not last longer than 3 months.
Yeah, it cannot be, I think, 90 days, but obviously this can be rotated by some employers, and it is, unfortunately. But yes, that is true. It definitely shouldn't be more than that, but even 3 months is quite a long journey without any compensation. No. And I think quite few organizations anymore actually are posting like job vacancies for unpaid internships. I think it's becoming like reputational damage for them. So it's namely if for example, a university or a school wants to partner with an organization and it's part of a course or something about their studies, then it could be unpaid. But an organization that is explicitly seeking for unpaid interns, that's a notorious list. There are not many of that kind of firms anymore in Finland, I hope.
Thank you. I have another question. When you were switching from academia to corporate world, what was your strategy? What did you do? What steps?
Well, I guess I was lucky in many ways, because I only applied one job and I got it, and then that was it. I knew that I definitely wasn't the best applicant. Actually, this was kind of a special job. There were more than 500 applications, really talented people from different sectors of the society. And I didn't have CV, much of it. I didn't have experience. I didn't know the people in the organization at that time, etc. So I was definitely lucky, but there must have been 5 or 6 rounds of interviews and assessments, etc., in order to get the first job, which was a really good job. So I knew that even though I'm not the best, I'm definitely the best prepared candidate in every single round of the hiring process. And that gave me confidence, and people see confidence. I don't think any employer wants to hire competence rather than feeling of this person is capable and willing and definitely motivated to work for us and learn new things. It creates trust, and we all hire trust. Yeah, for me, I think working really hard in this one, and I didn't look for jobs that I didn't really have passion for, so I just aimed in a way high. And I know it's never easy, but I was also lucky, and I really worked hard in the recruitment process. But for example, I had a video CV. I think it gives a more personal touch. People can hear your voice and see your gestures. That's a good tip for anyone nowadays. And I used the bullet point thing in my motivation letter. I think I must have had 7 or 8 bullet points, 1 paragraph in each of them. And I went through my learnings and my skills from my cultural background, from my studies, from my volunteering work, NGO work, from my sports, etc. And I was really thinking carefully, how can I contribute to this organization? What is their core business, and how does my background fit in there? And quite often, when you look at motivation letters, it's you see that the person is thinking, how can this organization serve me? But the hiring manager is not really interested of that. They want to hear that how can this person contribute our business. It could be socially, it could be in any ways, but if you have the approach that how can this organization, why does the organization fit me as an individual instead of the other way around in your motivation letter, then it's not well written in my mind. Yeah.
Thank you. And also many people recommend network. What do you think is the best way to start networking, and where?
Yeah, networking is in a small society like Finland, where everything is based on mutual trust between people. Networks matter more than in bigger nations, definitely. So, for instance, seeking for a new job, you shouldn't go through, I don't know, Oikotie or Monster or wherever you have the list of God knows how many open vacancies and God knows how many people search jobs through them. It's always better to approach directly decision makers. So the best strategy is that you ponder really thoroughly, what do I want to do? Where do I want to contribute? Is it important for me? Does it match with my values? And then you start from these questions. Then you go a bit further and think about the type of organizations. Do I want to work in private businesses, in public sector, in NGOs? And then after this one, you start to think about, okay, do I have some industries which are close to me, where I would like to contribute, or even organizations that have particularly good reputation in my mind that I would absolutely like to serve. Okay, so you go through this path of thinking and you end up in a couple of organizations or industries. And then you directly approach some decision makers, not necessarily CEOs, but for example, middle managers. And you go through like we discussed before, the 5 super skills you have and why precisely this organization sincerely is the one that should be hiring you. They might not have open vacancies, but 80%, roughly 80% of the jobs in Finland are in a way given under the table, if you know what I mean. They are not there in Oikotie or publicly available. So even like as a good salesman, you have to create a need for the employer. And it's not expensive to hire a new employee in Finland. It's like the first 6 months there is notice period. They can sack you in one day with no consequences. So what matters the most is that you have the courage to approach directly the decision makers. If you don't know the organization, you haven't gone through their business or strategy or anything, you just bother the middle manager, then it's no good idea. But if you can convince him or her already in your 2 minutes call that please, you should definitely meet up with me. I know this organization. I've gone through the background. It's because I really want to work for you. I'm quite convinced that if you make 10 phone calls, 2 or 3 of them want to meet with you, and it increases your chance of getting your job tremendously next to just sending applications through email. How do you network? Well, I think best places to network are, for instance, whatever hobbies you have or your kids might have. Volunteering work is excellent place, somewhere where there is mutual interest between the people who participate. Of course, we have these different kind of platforms and communities which are explicitly made for business networking. I don't really, they might work, but I've never really understood why and how they work. I've never attended those that often, but also like peer support is definitely important, even if it's not networking. Like in business terms, but learning from people who are in a similar position as you is really, really important. So in that sense, for example, this community where we are now is excellent place to network, so that you can, reflect on yourself and get to know people who have similar problems than you have, and also similar opportunities, and sharing your ideas. Cool.
Thank you. And also, I know that many people who completed PhD, they get rejections because they can be overqualified for a job. Do you think if there anything that can be done that you can put on CV or motivational letter?
Yeah, well, overqualification. Now, you maybe haven't been able to show your motivation for that role if they think you're overqualified. It could be even master's degree and they say you're overqualified, but that is always an excuse. Like, obviously every employer wants to hire somebody who can commit to the organization, and if you are super ambitious and really, really educated, etc., they might think that, okay, why would we hire her if in, I don't know, 18 months time she's gone already. Those are the most expensive employees for organizations. You onboard them and you teach them and educate them, give responsibility for a year or two, and then they are gone to the competitor, obviously. So overqualification is not really the problem, but for example, if you're relying on your degree instead of being able to explicitly state your motivation to serve that particular organization, that is quite often the real problem. But of course, it's always easy to say that, this is not an interesting person, I don't want to hire him. Let's say he's overqualified.
Thank you. We have a question. Are there any regulations that determine salary rate depending on level of education?
Yeah, in public sector there are, but in private sector not. Like, depending on formal education, there might be some organizations which have their internal policies, but that's quite rare. There is very little transparency in salaries in Finland, and private organizations can do more or less what they want. However, they need to obey the collective agreements, and in those collective agreements, there's like 200 of them in Finland, depending on your industry. The experience matters in terms of minimum pay, but the experience is not necessarily attached with your formal degrees. So there's no black and white to say that the education, there is fixed salary rate depending on the level of education, unless you work in public sector. Over there are a lot of roles where PhDs have this kind of a minimum salary, and masters this, and bachelors that, and so on. But in private businesses, the collective agreements have pretty much always minimum rates for different kind of experience that should be paid. However, if you're entering a managerial job, for example, then the minimum pay doesn't really matter, because you're anyway being paid then the minimum. Yes, so it's not the reason for overqualification. The salary is not, no.
Okay. And why did you actually decide to pursue academic career from the beginning?
Well, for many reasons. I think I really like doing my master's thesis. So in a way, I was bit by a research bee. So that was one of the reasons. But also because I was doing my sports more or less professionally. So it was very easy to combine PhD studies with training 2 or 3 days times a day, and I lived 2 years in the beginning of my PhD studies in the Netherlands because of sports. So back and forth, Helsinki and Arnhem in Holland. So there was also this practical reason, and obviously as a PhD student, I think in Finland, no, I don't think, I know in Finland it's easier to get proper funding for your studies than elsewhere in the world. It's not that you don't even have to pay for the degree, but you also get funded. And I even, for instance, got factual salary for doing my studies. So it's really a privilege to do PhD studies in Finland. At least it was for me. So obviously, while you were doing sports, you got to proceed your career by studies. You were being paid for that. It was really interesting. I knew that research is interesting and important. So I guess that's why.
Thank you. And I think I have to ask this question about language. So what do you think, how important it is to be fluent in Finnish? And I guess the main thing that it's really difficult to be fluent in Finnish. So even if you are, for instance, an intermediate level, do you think it can already help?
Yeah.
To learn the job?
No, I'm not gonna lie to you. Of course, if you have, if your name doesn't sound familiar, there is a reason to believe that maybe you don't speak fluent Finnish. So it does impact still in Finland in the labor markets. Definitely your language skills and even your name. I'm really sorry to say this, and I haven't, foreign name myself. At least my family name is. So it does matter, but not always. And we have many Finlands when it comes to cultures. Like in rural areas, the culture is a bit different than, for example, here in the Helsinki region. We are getting more open-minded all the time. And we have a lot of organizations where the hiring managers work from Stockholm or Copenhagen or even from London, you name it, not only from Finland. And the company language is in any case both the formal language and the informal language, more or less English, especially in certain industries as tech and gaming. But still, yes, the language is similarly as you're being overqualified. It's the perfect excuse. Quite often there's just 125 applications. It's like if you're renting your house, you've got, I don't know, 200 applicants. Most flats in Töölö have that. Again, you are hiring trust, and we all have. It's very human that we think that people who somehow have similar background as I do, I feel somehow more trustworthy. And hence, if you don't have the time to really dig deep into the candidates and their backgrounds, what they know, who they are, then you take the quick road. And it becomes really a homogeneous path that you recruit people who are just like you, which is a very big problem, but that is also very human, and I think exists in other countries as well. Yes, in some industries, language is also factually a problem. If you don't speak Finnish, it might be a safety hazard, for example, in construction yard, etc. So there should be every, for example, third at the yard being able to speak fluent Finnish or so. But in knowledge-intensive industries, if you're doing specialist job, managerial job, fluency in Finnish is not ever really mandatory, but it helps in client work. Yes, we are changing steadily, but slow still.
Thank you.
I think, however, people always get impressed if you speak Finnish to someone and you really try, even though it's not fluent. So it's always better to approach someone in bad Finnish, making sure that he or she knows that you are also fluent in English or in, I don't know, Russian or Arabic or whatever. But trying to show your courage in speaking Finnish. It gives often the feeling that even if the language skill is not perfect, this guy has the attitude, and that's what we are hiring: trust and hence attitude.
Thank you. And what advice would you give for people who are now searching for a job or trying to switch from academia?
Yeah, so like I said before, it's not perhaps the most pragmatic approach to go through job listings and send your CVs and for open vacancies. It's way better to think the organizations and why you want to serve them, and then think what can you, particularly as an individual, you specifically, contribute to this organization, and then approach them directly. You can send an email, maybe it's not read, but in the email you always say that, by the way, I will be calling you in 2 days' time. So this is just a heads up. So that's always a good way to approach, assuming that you don't have connections ready in Finland. Always the very best way is to make your friend who knows somebody approaches a hiring manager that works the best. But if you don't have those connections, then just directly approaching the hiring people, because most organizations, if they are medium-sized or big organizations, not necessarily the small ones, they can afford to hire new people. They cannot necessarily afford to go through the recruitment processes. So in that sense, it's more likely for them to have open vacancies created for you if you approach them first. And yeah, when it comes about the soft skills, etc., your learnings, if you don't have like CV, you haven't worked in the industry, or maybe any place except you have had some summer jobs or so, you need to overcome that obstacle by thinking about the skills you have learned from other parts of your life. Like, for example, me, I was in the management team of a big organization as my first job, as my first real corporate job. I didn't have experience from business, but I had a lot of skills I had learned elsewhere, and I was able to convince people that I actually have them. So I'm sure you can do it as well if I could, or at least it's very likely.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's about the time that we are finishing.
Yes.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Yes, very, very informative. I was busy taking notes while Sami was talking. It was very, very helpful. Are there any more questions? I'm checking. No. Okay, so thank you so much, Sami. It was great having you today. Elena, would you like to say something else?
No, I think we're done. We're done for now, and now our series of webinars are going on vacation. So we will be back in August, September.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sami. Thank you. We hope you liked this session, and the link will be soon up on our YouTube channel. So if you missed out something, then feel free to have a look at it. Yes. All right. Okay, then. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.